I know we kind of jumped a lot right into the Wi-Fi because that is kind of the biggest, like, well, what's going
It
on
is.
here with Wi-Fi?
SCW said Wi-Fi?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches Roundtable. This week we're going to be doing a product-focused episode. The product on the docket today is the Garrison 5.0 Mini PTZ. So we're going to check this one out, talk all about it. Of course, I've got an awesome panel of experts with us today. I'd say let's go ahead and get started. And first, maybe helping everyone understand the Garrison, really what this camera is and why we're covering it today.
Yeah,
Kick us off.
I'll take that if nobody else wants to. So the Garrison is an indoor only mini PTZ. So it's kind of a very different PTZ than we've carried in the past. We've generally carried kind of the commercial.
No, well, I'm going to
grade.
actually stop you right there, James. That's a perfect segue because you said something that we typically don't use here at SCW, and you said indoor only. Most of our
Yeah.
cameras are completely IP67 rated, which is good for indoor and outdoor use.
Yeah, in fact, as of right now, and this could change in the future if you're watching the video a little bit in the future, that this is our only non-weatherproof camera. So this is the only one that you can only place indoors. So the design for this PTZ is it's going to fit the niche of indoor applications. So your lobbies, your indoor convenience store operations, I think is a good option for this camera. There's lots of things that you can do with this camera because it is so small. It's a small PTZ. It's only 5 inches in length, and it weighs just over 1.5 pounds. So you can kind of place it in a lot of spots that you can't place our current PTZs in. They're either too big, too heavy, or like the Lookout Mini. It's a smaller PTZ, but it can only be wall mounted. So
To point out another thing that's really unique about it is you don't need a bracket to mount it. It just mounts directly onto the ceiling. And so that might be ideal for, there's a lot of churches that really like having PTZs, for example, and the process of having this big giant jacket, that's hanging off the side of the building, and this camera that's like as big as a person, not a really good ideal fit for that sort of scenario. So the fact that you can mount it directly on the ceiling without needing a whole bunch of apparatus and big beefy, devices, and the fact that it's so small really does fill a niche that we didn't really have inside of our product selection before this.
Mhm. Absolutely. And to piggyback off that, the aesthetics of the camera alone, are significantly different, would differ significantly from our, traditional commercial PTZs. So, for indoor applications, that's exactly what this camera is designed for. So we've talked a little bit about some of the use cases we could see it being used in and some of its feature sets, but I would love to take a moment here and dive deeper into the feature set because it's got some unique ones. First off, of course, it's PTZ, and of course, it's Wi-Fi capable. But can we talk through kind of what that means, what that actually would look like?
So I know we're talking a lot about it being a Wi-Fi camera. I don't want to take away from the fact that this does still have the Ethernet jack, the RJ45 jack on the camera itself.
That's a great point.
Coming from support, that's the way we would prefer you to connect your camera, just because Wi-Fi, it's not as reliable as a hardline would be. But we do understand that there are certain times and situations where, Wi-Fi is just going to work out so much better. That doesn't mean that you don't have to run a cable to it. The camera does still need power. You can plug it in with a 12-volt DC 2 amp.
yeah, it's a
Power
product
piece.
option on it. You would just click that. So if you are planning on using it through wireless, like he's saying, you still need power. It's a 2 amp 12-volt power adapter. So you can choose to purchase ours, or if you have a power box or anything like that you're already using, you can definitely use that. But we've had some unique applications for this actually already when it comes to using the Wi-Fi. Ben, I know you know a lot about it, but I would generally say if you can use a wire and you can do PoE with it. It's just like any of our other normal mini PTZ. You still can power through the PoE, but there are some situations where you just can't get a wire there, and maybe we were planning to get a wire, but an Ethernet cable there, but it just may take some time, and you still want to have some coverage for a while. So There's definitely applications, but Ben, do you want to talk about that pretty unique one we had?
Yeah, definitely. And I think before I jump into the details on that, it's important for us to preface all of our commercial grade cameras require two things: power and a way to send data. The Garrison is unique in that it provides you two mediums to send that data, either
Yep.
through the medium of a physical cable or through the medium of Wi-Fi.
Mhm.
And so now that we understand what the cameras need, we had a client, steel manufacturer. They have track cranes in their facility where they have power, but didn't have a good way to get data to where they needed these cameras to monitor these cranes. And so the Garrison was actually a very good fit, cost comparison wise, to their previous solution because of all the built-in capabilities with it having Wi-Fi capabilities, but also the PTZ control. So they're actually able to limit the number of cameras that were mounted on these cranes, while also limiting the amount of external third-party equipment that was required to get all this set up. So for them, it was a big win, and it allowed them and afforded them to be able to roll this solution out, to their facilities nationwide. So pretty neat.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, the kind of I've heard of situations where I remember a customer was asking, he was in a bank vault and they just couldn't get wires in there, but they had strong, couldn't run an Ethernet cable into it. It used to be an old bank, but they still wanted a camera in that room, and they were looking for Wi-Fi solutions, and this would have been fit in the bill. I don't think we had any Wi-Fi solutions back then for them, but
And I mean, I definitely just want to speak to this camera and its use case, performing extremely well in areas where, tracking or tracing cable is extraordinarily difficult, right? Now, remember, we're still going to have power, but being able to rely on the Wi-Fi capabilities of the camera can afford you to put this camera in places like lobby entrances, hallways where things might be difficult, staircases, right? Places where you traditionally might not have cameras or have the ability to put camera.
I do want to make sure that we're not making it seem like this is a preferable way to do it, though. As the person who authored our original, like, if you're doing commercial grade, do not do Wi-Fi cameras,
Right.
article that we have is, it's like 10 years old now. And we've kept it updated. And I would still maintain that that's a really good idea, because there's very cheap devices that you can buy that jam Wi-Fi signals. You can even buy, or even download for free, little cheap applications for your cell phone that can kind of just send garbage out over the Wi-Fi connection that will disrupt your camera feed. So having an entire system where every single camera is Wi-Fi is a tremendously bad idea.
yeah, I think, maybe last resort sort of a harsh term for that, but kind of you want to be able to come into any security camera system with the thought that if I can run a cable, I should. If I can run a Cat5 or Cat6 cable to it, it's much better. But yeah, like I said, the bank vault situation and the crane are good examples of where that's just not actually possible. So it's a good fallback to, that the coverage may be a little less reliable or somewhat less reliable than a cable, but it is coverage that you can get that you might not have been possible without Wi-Fi there. So
Yeah, I mean, let me bring up another example. Like, let's take the idea of an elevator. An elevator is one of the most expensive places to put a security camera. And that's usually because you've got to have the elevator certification company that comes in and runs the networking cable for you. And sometimes elevators come with this now, and hopefully yours does, because that can be a pretty expensive retrofit if it didn't have it when it was built. I'm not going to say that Wi-Fi is going to work in all scenarios here, because if you have a very tall building, you're probably not going to have consistent coverage throughout it. But if you have a smaller one, this might be an option that could work for you. You probably want to measure it, grab a computer and sit at all the stops and make sure you still have Wi-Fi connection at all the stops. But this is the sort of scenario where if you have, let's say a 2-story hotel, and you have 31 other cameras that are wired, and you're not afraid of disrupting the signal and not afraid of somebody jamming the signal and coming in and causing a whole bunch of damage, having one camera that is Wi-Fi isn't an awful idea. You just don't want to make the whole system that.
That actually brings up a question that I had from one of our people here at SCW is what is the range of the Garrison? And that's a really interesting question because with Wi-Fi, we're always thinking, how far can I go? How good is it going to be? Well, to make it very clear, the Garrison connects to your wireless infrastructure. There is no wireless capability coming from the NVR. There's no wireless signals coming from the NVR. So it's relying entirely on your wireless network infrastructure. And because it's the client, it's not, the range is depending on how good your coverage is, not the camera. So depending on where you're putting it, if you are doing on wireless, like Matthew said, definitely grab a computer there and do like speed test and ping test if you're unsure if you're going to have good signal quality in there to make sure that the camera's not going to disconnect, because you really want to avoid a weak signal there that's going to potentially have the camera go online, offline, and then you have to reboot it. Kind of like I'm sure everyone has had to reboot something on wireless because it's just not connecting because they get a weak signal or something like that. So just thought I'd throw that out there for sure.
And to
Yeah.
piggyback off that, James, sorry, Michael, it's just,
Go ahead.
that's just another consideration you have to have, right? With trying to utilize the Wi-Fi capability of the camera is those, same experiences in regards to Wi-Fi you're going to have with this camera as well, right? The pairing, unpairing, potentially losing signal, weak signal. Now you have a camera on your network all the time. It's
Yeah.
another device to manage. These are all things that you must consider if we're
Mhm.
going to utilize the Wi-Fi capability. I think it's important to know that the camera just has it.
Yeah.
And I just want to kind of point it along with that, as far as the support aspect of that goes, we're going to be, if something like that is happening, support's going to be questioning, what kind of router do you have? How's the signal? Do you have any particular spots in your home or your office or wherever the case may be that are kind of dead zones? Is this camera going into a position like where you can't get Wi-Fi on your phone? So it's going to be one of those things that we just kind of have to work with you to figure out placement for a camera like this.
Without
And
a doubt.
even to back out a little bit, just to talk about the PTZ, because I know we kind of jumped a lot right into the Wi-Fi, because that is kind of the biggest, like, what's going
It
on
is.
here with Wi-Fi?
SCW said Wi-Fi?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What?
This is it's a 2.8 to 12 millimeter, so small zoom range. It goes super wide to slightly telephoto. It's 5 megapixel resolution. So it's going to cover an indoor area because again, it is an indoor only camera. Don't put this outside.
I have something I would like to kind of ask on that particular aspect with this camera being what it is.
Yeah.
What do you think about a situation maybe like a parking garage to where, yes, it is open on the sides, but in the more of the center of the building itself, it's usually pretty dry in something like that. With this being an indoor only camera, what do you think about a placement like that in a situation that using a Wi-Fi kind of in the middle of a parking garage?
It's a great question. Like I said, there's no IP rating on this camera. There's no weatherproofing, involved with this. So wherever you put it, you have to make sure that this is a dry situation, not, hey, it rains in here and 5 times a year it gets enough water in there. That could be enough to damage the camera permanently. And water damage for this camera is not going to be covered under warranty because it's not weatherproof. So it shouldn't be exposed to any, rain and everything. So
I also want to point out rain is not the only form of water. So humidity, dew, things like that. I would caution against using it in a lot of climates for a parking garage. You might get away with it in something like Arizona, where you don't have a lot of humidity. But if you put this in Florida, the humidity itself would kill the camera.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, James. I just I had
no,
that
that's
thought and I had to get it out.
it's a good scenario for sure. I think people, this is, we have other options that are all IP66 or IP67 weatherproof that are better situations for that. That we'd recommend before this one. This one's, an indoor camera for a reason.
Absolutely. I feel like we need one of those little, brand power. The more you know. things that
Yeah.
comes across. Yeah.
But
After.
let's talk for a second about all the times you're going to use this camera that are not Wi-Fi based, because I actually love this camera in, for example, our church market.
Oh,
So we have a ton of
absolutely.
churches that come to us who want to be able to record the pastor when he's talking. They want to be able to look around their congregation. They're concerned about somebody that might be, there was a big theft the other day that made national news of somebody who basically took all the money from the collection plate. So you've got this combination of security and sort of wanted to have this sort of production value thing of people who might want to tune in from home. It can be really, really valuable for that sort of thing. And our other PTZs, not older, our other PTZs are often just too large. They're just giant cameras.
They really
So
are. They really are. And yeah, to Matt's point, that's exactly right. Facilities that are, of age where they used a lot of plaster walls or ceilings or, cinder block walls and foundations, these type of
STW
scenarios.
headquarters.
There you go. Exactly. It's an old church. See, it was built to last, built to
Yep.
last. But the realities of being built to last is that it's extremely difficult to retrofit your facility on things like this, right? And so that's what these type of cameras can be used for. Absolutely.
Yeah, and even to jump back on to Matthew's point about the downsides potentially of weatherproofing, this is a very lightweight camera because it's there to be mounted on ceilings and other places. It's smaller, like we mentioned, but one of the other things, it does have a built-in microphone and speaker to it, and because it doesn't have to be weatherproof, they can make that speaker quite a bit better. They can make that microphone a little bit better as well. The openings can be a bit larger. So, in my experience listening to it and hearing the speaker, it's a bit louder than our other ones because of that. So, there's some advantages there for lobbies are going to be like the first thing I think of with this camera. You want to put a camera in a lobby, perfect camera for it because you can move it around. Car dealerships are probably inside of those. Another potentially really good option.
That's where
For
I was
anybody
going in my
who
brain
wants
too.
that PTZ function to be able to look around, audio, if it's very important, this is probably one of our best audio cameras now too. So it fits a lot of little niches, I guess.
Yeah, any interior space where you'd want, those type of functionalities, audio, being able to potentially speak back, and then, full maneuverability of, panning, tilting, and zooming. In interior retail spaces, your mom and pop type grocery store locations, things like this are perfect examples of, where Garrison would make a lot of sense utilizing the PoE
Yeah,
capabilities.
yeah. Above cash registers are really good
Absolutely.
option because you can zoom it in there and have some control over it in terms of where you place it and everything. So
it's a really great cash register camera.
Yeah.
Low profile, able to move it where you want it to be. So if you relocate the cash register, you don't have to take the camera down like you might have to
bars.
with a varifocal or fixed lens camera.
Yeah.
It's a really great camera for a lot of uses. Just don't get tripped up on having to make it Wi-Fi every time.
Right.
Yeah.
Ideally, if you can, plug it in.
And in fact, I'd
Please.
say SCW is so excited about this camera for all the other reasons except that it's Wi-Fi, right? So that's just an added benefit.
Yeah.
It's something that we must cover, but that is not, the key takeaway for us for this camera.
Yeah. Well, and Wi-Fi can be scary. I mean, your router goes out. Okay, you just lost that camera, but your other system, your other cameras are directly connected to it. So it can be scary. If you're using it for your business or for your home safety, that's a pretty serious thing that can happen. So hardwire all you can. Use the Wi-Fi if you absolutely have to. We'll help you set it up.
Awesome. So I think that covers it all. I think we went through this camera as in depth as we could. Really excited to keep having conversations about it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact any of the consultants at SCW or Michael's team. We're all happy to help. Thanks so much for tuning in this week, and we'll see you next week.